House.
Members, the question is that the motion be agreed to.
Mr Chairman,
I
Mr
call
Speaker.
Poto Williams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, we have been not supportive of this bill from the outset, and I want to spend my contribution talking about the problems that we have had with the policing cost recovery bill. Firstly, Mr Speaker, it's about, it's within the name of the bill itself, about cost recovery in policing services. It is our firm view that, that vetting of people who are going to work with vulnerable populations is probably a core service of the police, and as such, the police should be funded adequately to do so. We believe that the police have been underfunded in many areas, and that this is one area where we believe that funding should have been applied. And it comes down to the argument about what is a demand service. And during some of the select committee submissions and hearings that I was able to sit on, there was many discussions about demand service and about what might be termed a private benefit or a direct benefit to that individual or that organisation. And we discussed this a lot, Mr Speaker. One of the arguments that we put forward is that in terms of government requirements for such organisations that are funded by government, where they may be working with vulnerable populations such as children or the elderly, it is a requirement of those government contracts that staff are vetted. Now, our argument further is that we feel that police vetting is like the first line of defence in ensuring that you have a safe and appropriate workforce in place to work with those vulnerable populations. And it was our view that given that we are now in some of our services required to meet the legislative requirements of such bills, such acts as the Vulnerable Children's Act, for example, where the protection of children is paramount, but where the provision of service to those children is reliant on a safe workforce, where that workforce must be vetted, that in fact is actually in the public interest and should not be determined as a private benefit under the definition of this particular bill. It's been our strong argument all along. So vetting is the first line of defence to ensure that we have a safe workforce to work with our children. It also seems a little inconsistent with some of the other legislation that is ensuring that we work safely with our children, and I want to refer to the Sex Offenders Register and also back to the Vulnerable Children's Act, where we are on the one hand saying very clearly that we want to protect our children from terrible harm, but on the other hand actually making it a cost to an individual to for us to be sure that they are safe to work with those children. So we think that there is some inconsistency there. With regards to the regulations that the Minister has referred to, there were 3 SOPs that were presented to the House to exempt from the fees for police vetting for registered charities, for early childhood education and for registered teachers. And we notice that this legislation will now, by order in council, actually make regulations to exempt or set different kinds of fees, and that the Honourable Peter Dunn has actually taken some role in staking a claim that he was responsible for ensuring that this went ahead. Well, I have to say, actually, Peter Dunn was not the prime mover and shaker with that. It's actually the dozens and dozens and dozens of organisations who have volunteers, who are registered charities, who are very, very clear in their submissions to the Select Committee, and also very clear to the Minister as well, by ensuring that he clearly got the message that he should support them in this regard and ensure that they could be exempt from charges under this legislation. So I'm pleased to say that is going ahead. We're very glad for that, but it was actually as a result of some very strong lobbying by the community and voluntary sector that brought that regulation within the legislation. Mr. Speaker, this will pass. We are sad that our concerns with regards to ensuring that the police are funded appropriately haven't been heard. We're also sad that this actually does lead us down the slippery slope of being able to charge for other activities within the police range of activities, and that's not appropriate, we don't think. The police are there to primarily to serve and to protect, and we know they do a great job, and they need to be resourced to do that as well as they can. So we are disappointed that this may lead to other opportunities to recover costs. During the process with the Select Committee, some of the arguments that were made by colleagues from Labour and the Greens were about what types of activities they may be, and are we setting ourselves up to have a police force that may support those people who can afford to pay for it, and that is not a good look in this country. Mr. Speaker, this bill will pass. We are disappointed that our arguments haven't been heard in this regard, but I think that I am very supportive of the fact that charities will now have an opportunity to have those fees waived. We will keep a close eye on this particular piece of legislation to ensure that the costs don't escalate from the what the Minister has set at $8.50 per vet. We'll keep a close eye on that because we hope that what doesn't happen is what has happened in other jurisdictions where the costs have escalated into the range of $50 a head. Mr. Chairman, we won't be supporting this bill.